Gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It is I, Dave, the real music observer, stirring up controversy as usual, but also talking real music in real time for real people just like you, right there, and yours truly here. Chicago. They like to claim that they were the first rock and roll band with horns. Not so much, Batman. As much as I love Chicago, every time I've seen Jimmy Pankow in interviews, some people say Jimmy Panko, I think it's Jimmy Pankow, he likes to say, well, with apologies to Al Cooper, we were the first rock and roll band with horns. Okay, well, here's the deal. Your debut album hits about a year and a half after the first Blood, Sweat, and Tears album hits. February of 1968 is when Child is Father to Man is released by Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then the album, by the way, goes on to win Grammys. So it's a fairly landmark event. Rolling Stone, it's ranked in their, not that I believe everything a Rolling Stone says, but on this one I do. This is a great work of art, Child is Father to Man. Was it a pop commercial success right off the bat? Yes and no. I mean, if you look at chart singles, they had a tune on there called I Can't Quit Her. And this is prior to David Clayton Thomas, and then all of the lineup changes and the drugs, and just this band, I mean, they kept going, though. After a debut like this, and their sound, blues, jazz, rock, Al Cooper being the blues guy, this was a very innovative record, and to kind of gloss over it and say, well, with apologies to... I mean, what do you mean with apologies? Al Cooper would probably be thinking to himself, hey, we were first. And what's ironic is Jimmy Guercio, the guy who produced both the early Blood, Sweat, and Tears albums and the early Chicago albums in Chicago for a long period of time, until Chicago, I guess, found that his hand was in the cookie jar at some point, which Guercio doesn't comment. He doesn't talk about that. He declined participation in the Chicago documentary, which maybe to protect the guilty, not sure. Maybe, as Bill Champlin says, if you can't say something nice, then you just don't say anything at all. I find the connection a little bit interesting, though, that Guercio produced both of these bands, and he would probably say in a documentary, hey, not only did we have Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but we had this little outfit from Chicago called the Buckinghams. You may have heard the Buckinghams, kind of a drag, that group. 60s music, I know you don't hear 60s music anymore, but tunes like Hey Babe, they're playing our song and stuff like that. I used to play it on the oldie station. Yeah, that's how I got my Buckinghams mojo on. The thing about the Buckinghams is that they used horns. They were a rock band with horns, and they made these nice, pithy 2-3 minute songs that even today are ear candy if you put some headphones on. So you had the Buckinghams in what, like 1966, 67? I mean, the Buckinghams, I think they had like 5 big chart songs in 1967. But then you just, it's almost like Jimmy is ignoring 2 bands. He's just saying, no. Now, the Buckinghams faded very quickly, and you could say they didn't have the longevity, although they did have one album to me that was kind of very Sgt. Pepper-ish. I'd have to go back and look up the title for that. I am not like the 60s rock music expert at all, but I do appreciate all of that stuff. And the Blood, Sweat, and Tears material, by the way, is some stuff that's great because you haven't OD'd on it. In other words, it hasn't been on the radio all that much. In the 70s, as a kid, Spinning Wheel was on the radio like every hour, and When I Die, that was on the radio almost every other hour. But they had other great songs like Heidi Ho, They had some great writers that helped them, with their hits. But they had David Clayton Thomas for a long time. What's amazing, okay, is these days the band obviously has no original members. And this goes out to all of those Little River Band people. They have no original members, but they've got the blessing of the drummer who was in the group for a very long time, Columbi or something. I can't, his name escapes me. I did read about it a while ago, and, but anyway, he became a CBS Records guy, and then more or less has given the reins over to whoever is in the band. And you know who's in the band right now? It's pretty cool. Is Bo Bice from American Idol. He was a runner-up a few years back, has this great bluesy voice, and he sounds like David Clayton Thomas. And they've recruited all these great musicians, and I've listened to them, and if you don't think this is good, if you don't think this is if you want to call it a ripoff or a copy or a tribute band, whatever, again, you've got the blessing of the guy who owns the name, because everybody else in the band, including David Clayton Thomas, really didn't care so much, and he was more or less a hired guy to execute the music. And again, when you know business, it really helps in music, and apparently this guy knows business, and these guys are still touring, and I've watched some videos, and I'm completely blown away by it. In fact, I would probably say, okay, and this is going to cause some problems for me, the current version of Blue Oyster Cult, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, is more impressive to me right now than the current version of Chicago. All right? Go listen to the live performances. Now, you won't find as much stuff on YouTube, but Bo Bice, to me, is a better replacement vocalist than this current dude in Chicago, who's really more or less like a really good karaoke singer who can cover all the range, but he's not... he doesn't sound like anybody. He sounds like who he needs to sound like at the time when he sings, but it's just like, I don't know. You have to actually do a legitimate comparison. Plus, Bo Bice is a really good frontman. He runs around and he looks like he's in command of the song. And we know he's competitive, so he's got, some gas in the tank, so to speak. But that was really interesting to know that they're still around and they're still touring and they sound really good. And they're sanctioned by the original drummer. So, hey, take it for what it's worth. I mean, people still say, it's not David Clayton Thomas, it's not the real thing, therefore it's not Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Well, Thomas walked away in 2004, and that's the end of it, Batman. So, that's my video. Check it out. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, they were first. Buckinghams technically were ahead of them too, but as far as bands with longevity and horns and that style, that jazz rock fusion thing, BS&T, they're the real game in town. I'm Dave, and I'll be back with more controversy coming up soon, so stay tuned. I'll see you then.